Report. Joining us now, Congressman Bruce Westerman from House Natural Resources and Stifel's chief economist, Lindsay Piegza. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's good to see you both. Congressman, the president ran away from reporters today after they asked him questions about his Armageddon comment, that basically the U.S. and the world faces potential Armageddon similar to the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis over Putin and Ukraine. He seems to be saying incendiary comments to donors, just like going after MAGA voters. What did you think of this remark?
Well, I think the president needs to stop running away and start facing the problems that he and his administration and Democrats in Congress are creating. You know, one reason Putin's in Ukraine is because of Biden's weak foreign policies. The one tool we have to push back on Putin is our domestic energy and natural resources. But what does this administration and Democrats in Congress want to do? They want to lock it up and throw away the key and depend on China and Russia for the things that we need, and running to OPEC for energy when we have it right here at home if we would only develop it.
Yeah, I mean, to the congressman's point, Lindsay, by the way, Russia invaded Crimea and Georgia under Obama. They didn't do that under Trump. That's been the argument. But, Lindsay, we keep hearing that $5 gas is headed our way. Gas is popping for nearly 2 weeks straight. What do you think?
Well, I think right now that is a risk. And for the consumer, this is a sizable risk when we're talking about negative real income growth. We're talking about waning momentum for the broader economy, businesses pulling back. If we see price increases return, particularly at the pump, well, we know the fastest way to derail the American consumer is sustained heightened energy prices. And so this is a very large concern, not just for the broader health of the consumer, but as we look out to that very key holiday spending season. If we're spending more just to fill up the family car, there's less discretionary income to spend on other goods and services for the holidays.
That's an important point Lindsay just made. You know, Congressman, the White House is now saying, yes, we need more supply, but just not from U.S. energy. Watch this.
Gas, despite being a hydrocarbon, is a good thing, not a bad thing. And the more of it we produce, the better we're going to be, the more secure we're going to be. And actually, because it will often replace coal, the less hydrocarbons and carbon dioxide we will be emitting into the air.
Okay, that's Larry Summers. We're going to play the Deputy Treasury Secretary soundbite later in the hit. Congressman, so Larry Summers, Obama and Clinton official, says we need natural gas supplies now. We had energy independence, now we have energy insecurity. You look at what's happening in Paris, France. Paris is running out of gas right now because of refinery strikes.
Right. I think Larry gets it. Unfortunately, the administration doesn't get it, and it's been an all-out attack on all forms of domestic energy produced here in the United States. You know, the main problem with the Biden energy policy comes down to two things. It's physics and math. This isn't based on science and meeting the needs and the growing energy demands globally, or even cutting global emissions. This is more based on political science and social engineering rather than physics and actual engineering. And then they can't do the math because the programs they're pushing that they say is going to help stop climate change is actually going to do little to nothing or even make climate change worse, put more carbon in the atmosphere.
You know, Biden is turning to Venezuela. Chevron cannot immediately restart Venezuela's damaged oil fields from communist misrule, Lindsay. Let's listen to the Deputy Treasury Secretary on supply. Watch this.
So, Andrea, I agree that what happened, that OPEC did, was short-sighted. Short-sighted because one of the primary goals is to make sure that energy markets remain well supplied. So we're calling on those who own those gas stations to bring down the price.
Rather than celebrating American roughnecks, they go to communists in Venezuela, or they go to radical ayatollahs in Iran, hat in hand, in a humiliating display, begging them to produce just a little more oil.
What do you think, Lindsay?
Well, I think this just highlights the broader position that America has found itself in, reliant on international providers, be that for energy, be that for chips, be that for important materials in terms of PPE or pharmaceuticals, antibiotics, the list goes on. And I do think that in the aftermath of COVID and still facing these very stringent supply chain dislocations, this should be at least the beginning, a wake-up call to return at least some production back to U.S. shores. Again, be that energy or production of other key goods for the economy. Now, globalization obviously does have its positives, but at some point we do have to, at least from a national security standpoint, secure the American economy and secure the American public.
Yeah, I mean, to Lindsay's point, the White House is not answering the ringing wake-up call that's been, off the hook right now. The White House, Congressman, is now considering having the president declare again, try to do this, a climate change emergency so he can enact more climate change policies via his executive powers. But we've got the circular turnstile world of Biden and the Democrats. Biden packed his White House with climate change recruits. He and the Democrats got more than $55 million in political donations, $30 million this past year from green groups. Then they do hundreds of billions of dollars in new green energy spending. That goes right back to those climate groups, and taxpayers have to pay for all of that spending. You look at BlackRock, led by CEO Larry Fink. 4 former BlackRock officials now work in the White House. BlackRock is big on environmental and social policies, like people like Brian Deese or Adewale Adeyemo, who we just heard from earlier. What do you say, Congressman?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. And, I can't wait. I hope Republicans gain the majority in November so that we can have oversight hearings on this administration that's out of control. I can't wait to bring CEQ officials in before the Resources Committee and ask them these questions. There's way too close of bedfellows there with Wall Street and the bureaucracy, especially at the White House. And this is causing harm to the American taxpayer. It's not accomplishing any of the so-called climate goals that the administration states they want to achieve. What it's doing is funneling taxpayer money into investment funds that are used to attack American industry. Venezuela, really? What about Texas and Alaska and Louisiana?
And what about U.S. energy workers? Final word, Lindsay Piegza. This is at the heart of the story. It's about, garden variety corruption. It's about, unchecked, no strings attached climate change spending going to grease the palms of their climate donors. Final word, Lindsay.
Well, I think it's broadly speaking about the continued expansion of the government balance sheet, continued government expenditures that do nothing to support the economy, but create long-term barriers to getting the U.S. economy back on track, something that the Federal Reserve is certainly trying to contend with as we face a 4-decade high in inflation. And the economy is still trending for negative growth.
Lindsay Piegza, Congressman Westerman, thanks for joining us tonight. Okay, America's crime crisis. We've got this